Today, I'm talking with Michelle Pargman. Michelle has over 25 years of clinical experience. She's worked extensively in private practice and with employee assistance programs. And she's recently become the president of the Jacksonville chapter of NAMI, which is the National Alliance on Mental Illness. But what I'm most excited about isn't about her resume, it's her. Michelle, we've known each other for many, many years, and I've always appreciated your ability to bring levity into serious spaces. I think you could probably make it as a comedian if you wanted to, but also your deep and steady compassion for people. So what I'd like to do is start from the beginning. So if you can travel back to your earlier years, have you always been the caring one?
No. You know why I say no? Because I am picturing my sister being with me in this room. And if my sister was here, she would probably not describe me as completely caring when we were growing up, because she was 6 years younger than me. And I would have myself on a soundtrack probably saying, "Get out of my room, leave me alone." So that was kind of the antithesis of caring. But I do remember when she was born, and I remember being a 6-year-old first grader, just kind of looking at this baby that just came into my life. And I know that I had a caring spirit about her. I do know that. Um, so, maybe it depends who you ask, but I do think that ultimately I had a lot of empathy. I was born with kind of having a lot of empathy. I don't remember a time where I didn't, and just really, I think I did come out of the womb caring, but I may not have always behaved in that way, in a congruent way. But yeah, yeah, I hope so. I hope so.
Sounds like your sister had a big influence on you.
Yeah, it was, she brought me from a world of being an only child to a world of not. um, and she was cute. And so, I remember, when friends would come over growing up, she was cute. So attention kind of scattered, but that was okay. But yeah, and she continues to. She's one of my closest friends. In fact, my dad will take a lot of credit for this, but when I graduated graduate school and she only went through so far her first year of college, so after her freshman year and after I graduated, my dad encouraged us both to go to Europe together. And that was a really turning point, I think, in our adult lives, that we really got close. And found out we were really good travel companions. And so we spent about a month going through Europe. So my dad takes good credit for encouraging us to do that. Yeah.
Nothing brings you closer than traveling with somebody, for sure.
Yeah.
So at some point you were in your college years, high school college years, and at some point you sort of leaned towards this clinical field. Do you remember what it was that first kind of pulled you toward this field?
Um, I don't remember what pulled me to, for instance, the Alachua County Crisis Center, which I credit a lot of why I ended up taking the path in graduate school that I did. I don't necessarily remember how I got connected to that, but that was an absolute powerful. Anybody that went through that training, it was a very intense several weeks of training. And then I ended up becoming a trainer. I ended up becoming a care team consultant. I ended up doing an internship through there. It really shaped me very early on, and it continues to make an impact in the way that I interact with people. And we learned the first question I remember when we went through that training on the very first day, the director said, "What would it take for you to call a crisis center?"
Mm.
And that was like the first introduction into a really powerful yet very simple exercise about empathy. What would it take for you? And I still use that. I use a lot of things that I learned from that experience.
Yeah, what would it take for you? So that kind of gets you thinking about how low could you go before you reached out to a crisis center? And it sounds like that's a great question, and it sounds like that was lasting for you and that you still use that. Can you think of any specific cases in that crisis center that you also took away? Anything that stands out?
Well, one of the things I wanted to say, even about not even having to go low, so now that same crisis center, when you call 988 and you're in the Northeast or North Central Florida region, it would go to the Alachua County Crisis Center. And I really emphasize the importance of, you don't have to be suicidal to call a crisis line. You don't have to be in complete and utter low point to call 988. You can do that. 988 can be a tool for anybody, because they're available 24/7. And so I know that didn't answer your question that you just asked, but it was kind of a holdover from the last one. So your question was about any cases or anything that stood out. Um, a lot of different things are coming to my mind. One thing, it was the way we did things back then, back in the 20th century. Um, for everything was handwritten. All the things that we did was, everything was paper. And we also covered for the United Way information and referral lines after hours. So that was all paper and having to rummage through. And then I don't know if they still do it this way, but as part of the care team, we would actually go out. We were part of a mobile unit, and we would go out and transport people if they needed transport to crisis oriented resources. So all of those, and by the way, I'm interrupting my own self to say that we also had to take, I think we were required to take at least one overnight shift during a certain period. We might have been required, we may not have been, but I do recall taking some overnight shifts. Sometimes you got to do it with another person, sometimes you might have been there by yourself. All things that I'm not sure if they have continued to operate in this way, but all of those experiences stand out to me to this day.
Yeah, that is amazing. It sounds like it was just just an amazing experience for you, and that you learned a lot, especially having to stay overnight. And you're right there with the people, and
Well, it
that's
was a crisis. It, just to clarify, people were calling in. People didn't come in person during after hours. We would see them during the day. There was counseling in person going on, but all of the overnight activity, it was over the phone.
Mhm,
And it could have been, that was the other thing. Even if you were alone on a shift, you were trained to handle multiple calls at the same time.
mhm.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
go ahead. You were going to say
No,
something?
and
Oh,
and
oh,
by the way,
uh,
I'm not stopping. And by the way, it was also the only requirement to go through this training was to be a human being over the age of 18. That was the only thing. You didn't have to be degreed. In fact, most of us weren't. And like I said, this was before I even went on to graduate school. I did this. And so that was also amazing. And that speaks to the power of empathy, that it really, the only requirement was to be interested, to be available, and to be a human being doing this work.
and I think those opportunities still exist for anyone who wants to volunteer.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let me ask you this, Michelle, because you and I are from the 1900s. You pointed that out, and that's rare these days. So, what do you think people are struggling with now?
I just gave a presentation recently and I said really the top two reasons why people seek out oftentimes employee assistance programs, for instance, which is what I have been working in the field of for over 25 years, is relationships and stress. And I think I think those remain the top two. They have been a steady top two for the last 3 decades. Um, Certainly more than that, but you know, to live in this world is to have stress. Um, Somebody put it once that not to have stress is a dead person problem. Like so we all experience it, and sometimes our capacity for dealing with the demands are not as wide as we would like them to be. And so that's why I love working in the EAP field, because oftentimes that is a great first step for people that have access to that, whether through their employer or through their household member's employer. And relationships, we're all a part of a relationship, even if the relationship is with ourselves. So to me, those are really the top two things that I see most often.
Yeah, I totally agree. Do you have any personal strategies to manage stress? I mean, how do you handle it?
hmm So, stress to me, managing stress, and I love when you say manage it because it's not about getting rid of it, it's not about eradicating it, it's about navigating through it. And I think it is a mind, body, soul type of strategy. You can't just limit it to one approach. I think it involves a very holistic way of approaching stress, because sometimes, when I think about, and I ask this question a lot when I present, out of the three things, thoughts, feelings, and actions, what's the hardest one of those three to change? I know you're interviewing me, but I'm going to ask you, what do you think the hardest one out of those three is to
I think
change?
they're all difficult, and I think it might depend on the person. I guess for me, the hardest thing would probably be to change your thoughts. Maybe. What do you say?
Yeah, so interestingly, I think it might be hardest to change our feelings. And the reason why for me that I say that, because I don't think there's any wrong answer in it, but I think that our when we change our thoughts, and that's not always easy, you just pointed out, sometimes very difficult. Sometimes we've got to pay attention first to what our body is doing and our nervous system is doing before we even go to our thoughts. But if we sometimes change our thoughts, that can absolutely change what we do and ultimately change our feelings. Sometimes when we start with changing our action, even if we're not 100% or even 50% ready to do that, sometimes when we change an action, that also impacts how we feel. Um, and so I like to think about strategies in the thought realm, in the action realm, but also paying attention to our nervous system and in the somatic realm. Um, and I think also approaching it like anything else with curiosity, like to be able to really tame our critical judger and to really approach any kind of stress management strategy with curiosity, and to give ourselves space between how we're feeling and who we are, because our feelings aren't facts, our feelings don't define us, and our thoughts are not always correct. Out of whatever, I see a lot of data, and I don't know if any of it's true, but maybe we have 35,000 thoughts each day. I don't know what that number is, but out of those thoughts, so many of them are not accurate. And to normalize that for ourselves, and to be able to ask ourselves, where's the evidence? I think that's another potential stress management strategy.
I love that curiosity. I'm right there with you. So curiosity to me also implies you're sort of opening to the fact that you don't know. I don't know something. So I'm open to some new information or something completely new that I may never have seen before. Can you think, so you and I, like none of us are immune to this, right? So we all, and so it's just there's ups and downs. It's just it's like the weather. And can you think of a time recently when can you like give an example of when you managed stress personally, like a technique that you employed that worked for you?
That's a great question. I'm trying to think of when the last time it actually worked. Um, I think in a way I kind of apply that curiosity moment to moment when I need it. Um, I am trying to think of, for instance, last night I was at a pharmacy looking for um, some medication or something for my son. My son is not a baby. He's not even a kid. He's a young adult. And he has been congested for so long. And it's stressful for me when I see anybody suffer, particularly anybody that I love suffering, whether that's physical or mental. And it just so happened that I've been observing him suffering physically with this I don't know if it's allergy based or what it is, but I mean, not to be able to breathe through your nose is so uncomfortable. And there's that empathy, right? And sometimes we over empathize, especially the moms out there, but certainly any parent out there. And so I think, a couple of things happened when it came to managing stress. Well, one of them was finding out facts and asking questions. So I went up to the pharmacist and I said, can I ask you your recommendations, because they went to pharmacy school and I did not, about what the best options are. And so I ended up thinking I was talking to the pharmacist, but was not. And she was a great salesperson. And I ended up having a lot of different things in my hand, one of which was a very expensive kind of home remedy, which, was all fine, but I was willing to do whatever I needed to do to take back to end the suffering. And then I ended up realizing, oh, that was not the pharmacist. I ended up talking to the pharmacist. She took all those things out of my hand and she said, you just need this. And then when I got home, that nervous energy, because I could tell I was stressed, wanting to like have him take the right thing, he pointed out to me, he said, I don't really do well with micromanaging. And I was finding myself micromanaging, like, okay, do this and do this. And so I think, and I'm getting to your question, is feedback when I'm stressed. Sometimes we're the last to know when we're doing something that negatively impacts someone else. And I think when we're stressed, oftentimes it's other people around us can tell, but we're not as clued in. And so being open to feedback, I think, is a really important part of giving ourselves that space and recognizing that we all make an impact on other people, whether we realize it or not. And so listening to feedback and not feeling like you have to respond to it, react to it, get defensive about it. And I think that is something that I try hard to practice. I'm not always great at it. Like you said, no one is immune to this stuff, but I think that's such a helpful thing. So whether you're talking about just stressing when you're by yourself or stressing when you're around other people or work or home life or whatever it is, just to be open to somebody who may point out something to you.
Yeah, so that's really good. So you can listen to feedback, but not try to judge yourself when you hear it, but be open to feedback. But then on the flip side, realizing that everybody is pretty much stressed, most of the time, you can do everybody else a favor by giving them gentle feedback, right?
Yeah, not everybody's open to it though. And so that's the other thing, like asking even that question, can I give you some feedback? That might be helpful because sometimes just, eh, planning that on someone they may not be a receptive audience.
I have a close friend, and he said to me once, he's like, I need to tell you something. I need to get something off my chest. I don't need you to fix it, and I don't need you to reply. I just need you to listen for a second. And I'm like, wow, I'm really glad he gave me that context, because let me tell you, my tendency is to fix everything.
And have you ever seen, and I think it's one of the best satires and most effective things, it's called It's Not About the Nail. You can YouTube it. I highly recommend it. And for anybody listening to this right now, if you tend to be a fixer or you have a fixer in your life and you want to really increase either your own or their awareness, watch this video. It's called It's Not About the Nail. It's just a couple of minutes long, and it really makes a great argument for the power of empathy and giving ourselves that space between wanting to react and fix. It's a great video.
I probably need to watch that because I'm a recovering fixer myself. So
You're in
I'm
good
working.
company. Yeah.
So, Michelle, get back to the fact that stress and relationship stress and all of that is so widespread. What gives you hope?
I want to say everything gives me hope. Every single thing. I take hope from everything. What gives me hope is always knowing that until we take our last breath, there's another opportunity. Everything is another opportunity. If you are trying to manage weight and you're on a health journey, every meal is another opportunity. You don't have to wait until Monday. You don't have to wait until the new year. If you are in a relationship and either party said something that negatively impacted the other, you don't have to wait. Although some people need their space and all of that, so don't jump in. But my point is that there's always an opportunity to start again. If you find yourself saying the wrong thing, whether it's parenting, whether it's whatever it is, because we're not infallible. We are not perfect people. And so being able to know, and even to say, if you're aware of something and you just stepped into something and that wasn't your intention, a great tool might be to say, can I start again? That gives me hope. Every new opportunity gives me hope. And there's hope that exists every time.
I love that. And I totally agree. Totally agree. Everything is an opportunity, and be quick to forgive yourself is kind of what I always think. And I think your sentiment mirrors that. So I wanted to talk a little bit about VirtueStrong. So you're a co-founder of VirtueStrong, and I wanted to know if let's say VirtueStrong becomes highly used and known, and people kind of use it on a regular basis. What changes?
I think like everything that we just talked about um, is something that there's that potential opportunity for processing with Virtue Strong. I think that whether it's trying out something new, whether it's a new thought or a new action, or approaching something in a different way, or feeling regretful about something that you might have done or said. I honestly think that there is nothing probably too big or too small to utilize Virtue Strong on. And again, it's not a replacement for human interaction in any way, but it gives you quick access to something until you get to use that opportunity with a human being. And it's not necessarily for everyone. And I think it's important for each person, with so many tools and so many things out there, to talk about curiosity, be curious about it, try it, and see if it's a fit for you.
Hmm. Yeah, I like that. And I think, like we said earlier, everybody kind of finds their way, and there's so many different options, and you pick the one that really helps you the most and follow your inner guidance. That's another thing that I always try to share, is to follow your inner guidance is important. Um, Michelle, tell us something that people might not know about you.
Um, you mentioned comedy. I have not done it in a while, but I did do a one time experiment doing stand up comedy. That's something that people may not have known about me, although people that I was friends with at the time in high school joined me and watched me do it. So I had a lot of support in the audience at the time. It was at a Holiday Inn at a hotel in New York, and I tried it. And I haven't tried it since. But you inspired me when you talked about that. Maybe that's something in my empty nest phase that I could maybe try my hand out again. But um, I paraglided over the Swiss Alps, and that's something I did with my sister. Not a lot of people know that about me, but I did do that when we went on that European vacation that I mentioned earlier. And usually when I play, and now I just messed my game up, but when I usually play two truths or three truths and a lie, I usually put that in there. So now if anybody has the opportunity to play that with me, they'll know that that is a truth. Um, and I think I'm trying to think of other things that people may not know about me, but I honestly think that I am so transparent. There's really not a whole lot that people probably don't know about me. Um, so yeah.
Well, those are great qualities, and I would have never guessed that you would have gone over the Alps like that. That sounds amazing, and I hope was that before the cameras and cell phones, or did you get footage of that?
Oh my gosh. All right. So quick story is that it was cameras. It was not digital cameras, but it was, we had disposable cameras that we took up with us. So we had pictures, we used cameras. And so there was film. And the next day, or that later that day, I don't remember, it was kind of a blur. We ended up going to Paris, and then we ended up, because I was the older one out of my sister and I, who were traveling at that time by ourselves, and we were on the tail end of our trip. I suggested, let's just sleep at the airport, because our plane leaves so early, or the train leaves so early in the morning. It's not worth getting a hotel room. Let's just stay at the train station. That's what it was. And it was that's a whole other story, and I won't go into that, because they lock up all the bathrooms, and they take the security goes with their drug sniffing dogs, and that was a whole adventure. But we felt so accomplished that morning. We got on the train, and all of a sudden I realized I don't have my bag. I don't have the bag with all of the film that took pictures of that moment that I was over the Alps. I was devastated. I went back. I wrote down my phone number, I think, or my address. I don't think we had cell phones at that time. I mean, I wrote down everything I could think of for anybody that would find my bag. And that was a very long time ago. And my bag never made it. Thankfully, I had my passport and everything on me, but I wouldn't stop talking about that bag. And again, now that I'm starting to talk about it, I remember that feeling of I cannot stop talking about this bag. It was such a loss of evidence of that trip. But anyway, yeah.
Oh my gosh, that is a travesty to have those pictures and not be able to walk away with them. Oh, geez.
Speaking of feedback, my sister had to say, I need you to stop talking about the bag now. So that was feedback. Yeah.
That's good. Well, Michelle, we've covered a range of issues. It's been a pleasure. I want to give you the opportunity. Is there anything that we left out or anything that you can think of that remains unsaid here?
I think I really talked a lot, which I'm not used to. I have to tell you, being a therapist, that is something that I love listening. And so I appreciate, Jay, you giving me the opportunity to talk, but I'm not used to it. And I obviously said a whole lot.
Well, it has been a pleasure. It's wonderful to hear you and to learn more about you. I got to tell everyone listening here that, Michelle, you're one of those rare people that when you feel better after you have a conversation than you did walking into the conversation. And to me, that's just a wonderful compliment. And it's very true. That's just the type of person that you are. And more people need to know you. And you're an amazing human being. And it's just a pleasure and an honor to know you and get to work with you.
Well, I feel the same way about you, Jay. I really do. I would describe you in the same exact way. So thank you.